A murder suspect who had been wanted by police since last week Thursday is now dead after a high-speed chase turned shootout with Milwaukee police late Friday night. The medical examiner's office has identified the man as 37-year-old Ernest Terrell Blakney. You can see video of the major police presence downtown last night right here on the left side of your screen. Officials had accused Blakney of shooting and killing his girlfriend, Nikia Rogers, last week after learning she was planning on leaving him. Video on the right shows their home near 83rd and Vienna, which authorities say he set fire to in an attempt to hide the crime.
August 25th, 2022. Milwaukee firefighters rushed toward thick black smoke billowing from a single-family home on the city's northwest side. Flames licked through shattered windows. The air reeked of gasoline and something far worse, someone they couldn't yet name. Inside, beneath charred debris and ash, they found her, Nikia Toyea Rogers, 36 years old, shot twice, once in the head, once in the lower back, and then someone tried to burn her existence away. But here's what makes this case absolutely chilling. Nikia wasn't caught off guard. She knew danger was closing in. She was leaving, packing her things, walking away from a relationship that had turned toxic, suffocating, terrifying. She had told friends he was crazy. She had made plans to disappear from his life for good. And that decision, that courageous, necessary choice to save herself, may have been exactly what got her killed. Because the most dangerous moment in an abusive relationship isn't the first slap. It isn't the screaming match or the shattered plate against the wall. It's when the victim decides they've had enough. When they grab their keys, their suitcase, their dignity, and they walk toward the door. That's when control turns into rage. That's when obsession turns into murder. Nikia's mother called her a bright light. Her friends said she brought joy everywhere she went. She had moved from Chicago to Milwaukee years earlier, chasing work, chasing life, chasing better days. She was someone who celebrated every moment, who loved deeply, who mattered. And on that August morning, as flames consumed the home she'd been trying to escape, someone made sure she'd never celebrate anything again. Welcome to Dark Truth Files. Where are you watching from? I'd love to know. Drop your location in the comments. And also don't forget to like and subscribe to Dark Truth Files for more real stories. Within days, police would issue a warrant for a boyfriend, Ernest Terrell Blakney. The charges were staggering. First-degree reckless homicide, attempting to mutilate a corpse, armed robbery. A manhunt exploded across Milwaukee. Helicopters circled. SWAT teams mobilized. Tips flooded in. And just over a week later, it would all end in a hail of bullets during a high-speed chase through city streets. But before we get there, before we talk about justice or revenge or how this nightmare concluded, we need to understand who Nikia really was. Not just a victim, not just a name in a police report. A daughter, a friend, a woman who deserved so much more than the violence that stole her future. What pushed her to finally leave? What red flags did people around her see? And why? In a city that loses too many women to domestic violence every single year, was Nikia's death yet another preventable tragedy that no one could stop in time? This is the story of Nikia Toyea Rogers, a woman who tried to save herself, a woman who ran out of time, a woman whose death should force all of us to ask harder questions about the people suffering in silence right next to us. Are we paying attention? Are we listening when someone whispers they're scared? Are we doing enough? Because Nikia tried to leave, and she died anyway. Nikia Toyea Rogers wasn't supposed to end up in Milwaukee. She was a Chicago girl, born and raised in a city that taught her resilience, humor, and how to find light even in hard places. But a few years before her death, opportunity knocked. Work called her north to Milwaukee, and Nikia answered. She packed up her life, said temporary goodbyes to family, and made the move. It was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance to build something stable. And for a while her mother remembered her as someone who radiated warmth, not in some poetic, exaggerated way, but genuinely. Nikia was the person who showed up, the one who checked in, the one who made you feel seen. She prioritized family above everything. Even living in a different city couldn't dim that bond. Phone calls, visits, constant reassurance that distance didn't mean absence. Friends describe her the same way. A bright light. That phrase keeps appearing because it fit. Nikia loved celebrating life. Birthdays weren't just dates on a calendar. They were events. Achievements weren't brushed off. They were honored. She had this infectious energy, this refusal to let the weight of the world crush joy out of everyday moments. She wasn't perfect. None of us are. But she was loved. Deeply, unquestionably. And she was 36 years old. An age where you're supposed to be hitting your stride. Building. Growing. Maybe looking back at mistakes with a little more wisdom. Looking forward with a little more clarity. Nikia had worked hard to get where she was. She wasn't chasing fame or fortune. She wanted stability, safety, peace. But peace became impossible once Ernest Terrell Blakney entered her life. The relationship started like so many do, seemingly normal at first. But somewhere along the way, things shifted. Friends began noticing changes. Nikia seemed stressed, withdrawn at times. She started opening up about problems at home, about Blakney's behavior, about feeling trapped. She used one word repeatedly. Crazy. He's crazy, she told friends. Not dramatic, not exaggerating. Just stating a fact she'd come to recognize. And once Nikia saw the truth clearly, she made the hardest decision a person in her position can make. She decided to leave. Leaving an abusive partner isn't like quitting a job or ending a casual friendship. It's tactical. It's terrifying. You can't just announce your departure and walk out the front door with a suitcase while they watch. You have to plan, move things slowly, create distance without triggering an explosion. And that's exactly what Nikia was doing in those final days of August. She had started moving her belongings out of the house she shared with Blakney. Piece by piece, quietly, carefully, she was building an escape route, brick by brick, hoping you wouldn't notice until it was too late, hoping she could slip away before his control turned into something worse. Her family didn't know the full extent of what she was enduring. That's how it works, isn't it? Victims protect the people they love by hiding the ugliest parts. They don't want to worry anyone. They don't want to be a burden. They think they can handle it alone. But Nikia was handling it. She was getting out. She was taking her life back. And that's what made her a target. August 25th, 2022. The call came in mid-morning. A house fire on Milwaukee's northwest side. Thick, dark smoke poured from the windows of a single-family home, visible from blocks away. Neighbors stood on their lawns, phones raised, watching flames devour the structure. Some had heard pops, maybe gunshots, maybe exploding glass. But in a city where violence hums in the background, it's easy to second-guess what you've heard. Firefighters arrived within minutes. They moved fast, gearing up, pulling hoses, preparing to breach the entrance. But as they forced their way inside, something felt wrong immediately. The smell wasn't just burning wood and drywall. It was chemical, sharp, deliberate, lighter fluid. Someone had doused the interior. This wasn't an accidental grease fire or faulty wiring. This was arson, intentional, vicious. And then they saw her. Nikia's body lay amid the wreckage, partially obscured by debris and ash. The flames hadn't completely consumed her. Thank God for that, because it meant investigators could determine what really happened before the fire started. And what they discovered was horrifying. 2 gunshot wounds, one to the back of her head, one to her lower back. She had been executed, shot from behind. No chance to fight, no opportunity to run. Just cold, brutal finality. And then whoever pulled that trigger tried to erase the evidence, tried to burn her body beyond recognition, tried to make Nikia Toyea Rogers disappear as if she'd never existed at all. But fire doesn't lie. Autopsies don't lie. And the truth was already screaming from that crime scene, before the smoke even cleared. Police immediately cordoned off the area. Homicide detectives arrived. Forensic teams began combing through charred remains, photographing bullet casings, mapping blood spatter patterns hidden beneath soot. The house wasn't just a crime scene, it was a statement, a message written in violence and flames. "You don't leave me." Neighbors were interviewed. Had they seen anyone fleeing? Heard arguments? Noticed anything unusual in the days leading up to the fire? Some had. There had been tension at that house. Raised voices, doors slamming, the kind of domestic chaos that people notice but rarely intervene in because, well, it's complicated, right? We tell ourselves it's none of our business. We convince ourselves it'll blow over. We hope someone else will step in. And meanwhile, behind closed doors, Nikia had been packing, moving her things out bit by bit, trying to escape without setting off the bomb she knew was ticking inside Ernest Blakney's head. But he'd noticed. Of course he had. How could he not? Her clothes disappearing from the closet, her personal items slowly vanishing. The shift in her energy, the way she stopped pretending everything was fine, the way she stopped engaging, stopped apologizing, stopped playing the role of the compliant girlfriend. For someone like Blakney, someone who needed control the way other people need oxygen, that withdrawal was unbearable, intolerable, unacceptable. And so he made a choice. If he couldn't have her, no one would. Investigators pieced together the timeline quickly. Nikia had been at the house that morning. She was likely continuing to gather her belongings, perhaps thinking she could finish and leave before things escalated. Maybe she thought she had more time. Maybe she underestimated how far he'd go. But Blakney didn't argue. He didn't plead. He didn't try to win her back with promises or tears. He grabbed a gun. The first shot hit her lower back, a devastating blow that would have dropped her instantly, collapsing her to the floor in agony. And then, as she lay helpless, he stood over her and fired again, point blank, into the back of her head, execution style. There's no other word for it. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a moment of lost control. This was calculated, methodical. He wanted her dead, and he wanted her erased. After pulling the trigger twice, Blakney grabbed lighter fluid, something he clearly prepared beforehand, and began dousing the rooms, the couch, the walls, Nikia's body. He lit the match and walked away as flames roared to life behind him, consuming everything she'd ever touched in that house. He thought he'd covered his tracks. He thought the fire would destroy the evidence, turn her into ash, make the investigation murky and inconclusive. He was wrong, because even through the smoke and ruin, the truth survived. Nikia's body told the story. The bullet wounds told the story. The lighter fluid told the story. And now, every cop in Milwaukee was looking for Ernest Terrell Blakney. There was never any question about who killed Nikia Toyea Rogers. Ernest Terrell Blakney, her boyfriend, the man she'd been living with, the man she'd been trying to escape, the man who couldn't bear the thought of her walking away with her freedom intact. Within hours of discovering Nikia's body, homicide detectives had enough evidence to know exactly who they were hunting. Witnesses placed Blakney at the house that morning. Forensic evidence tied him to the scene. And his sudden, frantic disappearance immediately after the fire screamed guilt louder than any confession ever could. Milwaukee police didn't waste time. A warrant was issued swiftly, and the charges were staggering. First-degree reckless homicide. Translation: he killed her with utter disregard for human life, attempting to mutilate a corpse. Translation: he tried to burn her body beyond recognition to hide what he'd done. Armed robbery. This charge raised eyebrows initially, but investigators believed Blakney had taken Nikia's belongings, possibly her phone, her keys, anything that could help him vanish or delay identification of her body. This was a man who snapped in a moment of rage. This was someone who planned, who calculated, who knew exactly what he was doing when he pulled that trigger twice and struck the match. But why? What drives someone to murder the person they claim to love? Control, That's the answer that rises from nearly every domestic violence homicide. It's not about love. It never was. It's about ownership, possession, the belief that another human being belongs to you, and if they dare to reclaim their autonomy, if they dare to say, "I'm done," then they deserve to be punished. Nikia's friends had heard her describe Blakney as crazy. That single word carried weight. It meant unpredictability, volatility, fear. She'd recognized the danger, and that recognition pushed her toward the exit. But abusers have a sixth sense for when their grip is loosening. They feel it before you even finish packing the first box. And Blakney felt it. He watched her pull away emotionally. He noticed her belongings slowly disappearing from their shared space. He saw her building a life raft, preparing to sail away from the storm he created. And instead of letting her go, instead of accepting that she had every right to choose safety over suffering, he decided to destroy her. There's a term for this in criminology: separation violence. It's the spike in lethality that occurs when a victim tries to leave. Statistics show that a woman is 75 times more likely to be murdered when she's in the process of leaving an abusive partner than at any other time in a relationship. 75 times. Nikia became part of that statistic. She did everything right. She recognized the danger. She made a plan. She started moving her things out quietly. But Blakney saw it coming, and he made sure she'd never make it out alive. Police also uncovered another layer to his motive: desperation. Blakney wasn't just losing Nikia. He was losing control of his entire narrative. If she left and started talking, if she told people what he'd really been like behind closed doors, his image would shatter, his power would evaporate. So he silenced her, permanently. Now the question wasn't who or why. It was where. Where was Ernest Terrell Blakney hiding? Was he still in Milwaukee? Had he fled the state? Did he have help? A manhunt exploded across the city. SWAT teams mobilized. Patrol units canvassed neighborhoods. Tips poured into the police hotline. Sightings, rumors, half-confirmed leads. Blakney's face was plastered on every news outlet, every social media feed. The public was warned. This man is armed. This man is dangerous. Do not approach, because investigators knew one chilling truth. If Blakney was willing to kill Nikia and burn her body to cover his tracks, he had absolutely nothing left to lose. And that made him a threat to everyone. For 8 days, Ernest Terrell Blakney was a ghost. He'd vanished into Milwaukee's sprawl like smoke dissipating into air. No confirmed sightings. No credit card transactions. No phone pings. Just silence and the growing dread that he might have slipped through the net entirely. Maybe cross state lines. Maybe hold up with someone willing to harbor a murderer. Maybe planning his next move. But here's the thing about running. Eventually you have to surface. You need food, gas, money, and desperation makes people sloppy. September 2nd, 2022. 1 week and 1 day after Nikia's body was pulled from flames, Milwaukee police received a tip, a possible sighting of Blakney in a vehicle on the city's south side. Patrol units responded immediately, fanning out across the area, eyes scanning every car, every face. And then there he was, behind the wheel, moving fast. Officers attempted a traffic stop. Lights flashed, sirens wailed. But Blakney didn't pull over. He didn't slow down. He punched the accelerator and turned a routine stop into a high-speed chase through residential streets, the kind of reckless, adrenaline-fueled flight that puts everyone in danger. Speeds climbed. Blakney weaved between cars, blew through stop signs, tore around corners with tires screaming against asphalt. Police vehicles pursued, trying to box him in without causing a catastrophic collision. Helicopters circled overhead. Radio chatter crackled with coordinates and commands. And then gunfire. Details emerged later about what exactly transpired in those final moments. According to reports, Blakney wasn't just running. He was armed. During the chase, he brandished a weapon, creating an immediate lethal threat to the officers pursuing him and anyone unlucky enough to be nearby. Police made a split-second decision, the kind of decision that gets dissected in boardrooms and courtrooms for months afterward. But in that moment, with a murder suspect fleeing at high speed while armed, they determined the risk was too great. Shots were fired. Blakney's vehicle lurched violently, then crashed. Officers approached cautiously, weapons drawn, shouting commands. But there would be no arrest, no interrogation, no trial. Ernest Terrell Blakney was dead. The manhunt was over, just like that. 8 days of searching, organizing, coordinating, ended in seconds with bullets and twisted metal. Some people exhaled in relief. Others felt cheated, because now there would be no courtroom reckoning, no opportunity for Nikia's family to face him, no chance for him to answer for what he'd done under oath in front of a judge with the world watching. He'd taken that away from them too. But here's what investigators discovered after Blakney's death. Details that added even darker layers to an already horrifying case. He hadn't just been hiding. He'd been planning. When police searched the vehicle and traced his movements over those 8 days, they found evidence suggesting he'd been gathering resources, possibly for another violent act, possibly to stay on the run indefinitely. There were stolen items in the car, cash, supplies, and chillingly, there were indications he'd been monitoring news coverage of Nikia's murder, watching himself become Milwaukee's most wanted, seeing his face everywhere, perhaps feeling cornered, perhaps feeling invincible. Either way, he'd made a choice that morning to run rather than surrender, to escalate rather than face consequences. And that choice ended exactly how these situations so often do, with more violence, more trauma, more lives shattered. For Nikia's family, Blakney's death brought no real closure. How could it? Their daughter, their bright light, was still gone. And now the man responsible would never have to sit in a cell and reflect on what he'd stolen, would never have to hear victim impact statements, would never have to live with the weight of his actions for decades behind bars. He'd escaped that justice, but he hadn't escaped Nikia's story. Because even in death, even with the perpetrator gone, her case became a rallying cry. Advocacy groups seized on her tragedy to push for stronger domestic violence protections. Community leaders held vigils. Conversations erupted about why women, especially women of color, so often fall for the cracks of systems designed to protect them. Why hadn't anyone intervened sooner? Why did neighbors call police when they heard arguments? Why do we still treat domestic disputes as private matters until someone ends up dead? Those questions hung in the air long after the smoke cleared and the chase ended. Ernest Terrell Blakney never faced a jury. He never heard a judge read his sentence. He never spent a single night in a cell paying for what he did to Nikia Toyea Rogers. His death during that September chase meant the criminal case closed almost as quickly as it opened. No trial, no testimony, no legal resolution that might have offered even a sliver of accountability. For Nikia's family, that absence of formal justice stung deeply. They'd been robbed twice. First of their daughter, then of the chance to see her killer answer for his crimes in front of the world. But here's what didn't close: the conversation Nikia's death ignited. In the weeks and months following her murder, Milwaukee's domestic violence advocacy organizations rallied. They held vigils in Nikia's memory. They organized town halls. They pushed for legislative changes that could prevent the next woman from becoming another statistic. Because Nikia's story wasn't unique. It was tragically common. Every day in America, 3 women are murdered by intimate partners. Every single day. And the majority of those deaths happen during or immediately after separation. Just like Nikia. Just like countless others whose names we'll never know because their stories didn't make headlines. Advocacy groups emphasize the painful truth. Women of color, particularly Black women, face unique barriers when seeking help for domestic violence. They're less likely to be believed by authorities, less likely to receive adequate protection, more likely to have their fears dismissed as overreactions. Nikia had told friends Blakney was crazy. She was actively leaving. But would the system have protected her If she'd reached out, would anyone have taken her seriously before it was too late? Those questions haunt her case. Nikia's mother and friends kept her memory alive not through bitterness, but through love. They spoke publicly about who she really was. The bright light, the celebration maker, the woman who prioritized family above all else. They refused to let her be defined solely by how she died, because she was so much more than a victim. She was a daughter, a friend, a soul who deserved decades more of life. Her family also made clear what they wanted people to take away from this tragedy. If someone you know is scared, believe them. If they say their partner is dangerous, don't minimize it. Don't suggest they're exaggerating. Don't tell them to work it out. Help them escape. Offer resources. Be the safety net they desperately need. Because Nikia tried to save herself. She recognized the danger. She made a plan. She started moving her belongings out. And she still didn't make it. That reality should terrify all of us into action. Today, Nikia's case serves as a teaching moment in domestic violence prevention programs. Her name appears in advocacy materials. Her story is told to illustrate the lethal risks of separation violence. And while that's important work, while those lessons might save lives, it doesn't bring her back. Nothing brings her back. Nikia Toyea Rogers was 36 years old. She loved celebrating life. She made people feel seen. She moved to Milwaukee chasing better opportunities. She deserved safety. She deserved freedom. She deserved to grow old surrounded by people who cherish her. Instead, she was shot twice and set on fire by a man who believed he owned her. Rest in peace, Nikia. You were loved. You mattered. Your light wasn't extinguished by those flames. It burns on in every woman who finds the courage to leave, in every advocate who fights for stronger protections, in every person who chooses to believe victims instead of doubting them. You deserve so much better. We all failed you, but your story won't be forgotten. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have you or someone you know experienced domestic violence? What do you think needs to change to protect people trying to escape dangerous relationships? Let's talk about it. And if the story affected you, please share it. Because awareness saves lives.